Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are in the day 10 of the vicious war in Ukraine. We cannot thank Ukrainians enough for fighting for freedom, for their freedom and for our freedom. And we cannot simply watch what is unfolding in front of our eyes without wanting to do something. The humanitarian effort around UK is massive. Everywhere you go, you can see people gathering humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Then lorries will be transported to Poland, and from Poland, they will give it to people who have to flee their country, who have to now go and hide from the bombs of Russian attacks. This is a very sad part of our history. And we don't really understand what will happen next, because the sky above Ukraine cannot be shelled as of today or yesterday. We don't understand when this event may happen, if at all. NATO cannot shoot Russian planes simply because they are afraid of the nuclear consequences that Vladimir Putin threatening them with. The incident on the biggest power plant in Ukraine was a near miss. And we all understand that if nuclear catastrophe will happen due to these attacks, the normality of our life will be under threat. And we need to start thinking about those consequences as well. I am from Belarus, and I remember Chernobyl. I remember how it happened and what happened afterwards. And the consequences are very long lasting. So we need to prevent it, and we need to put some pressure on our governments in order to give Ukraine more support and prevent all this nuclear disaster from happening. The group of lawyers and group of people, together with Gordon Brown and Dmitry Kuleba, Foreign Minister of Ukraine, have started a very interesting proceedings together with Chatham House. What they've started, they gathered together the same way as they already gathered, as British people gathered in 1942 in Chatham House, and they've started the process of creating a special tribunal. And statement says, calling for the creation of a special tribunal for the punishment of the crime of aggression against Ukraine. It is a very complicated political statement and law statement. However, simply because we cannot do something now doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything at all. In 1942, the tribunal that further became the Nuremberg process also formed like that. And the same was happened a couple of days ago, following the same steps British people did in 1942, without any hope, without knowledge that World War II will end. They didn't know when it will end. They had no idea whether it will be possible to put those fascists on trial. But they did some steps towards it, and the same steps have been already made. So I think that was a historical moment in history. And after finishing this war, I'm sure that Vladimir Putin, all his generals, and all the people who were responsible for this war, responsible for financing this war, for starting this war, will be put on trial. Russian propaganda was working very hard to create a parallel reality for Russian people. They simply take the same footage we watch on BBC or we watch about Ukraine and giving totally different narrative to it, saying that it is Ukrainians who are attacking their own cities, and that it is Ukrainians who kill their own children and women and soldiers. And many people in Russia, unfortunately, still believe it. The losses of Russian army, we know already, are massive. More than 10,000 Russian soldiers are dead. Many Russian soldiers stop fighting and try to escape the war. However, Vladimir Putin is insisting that everything is going according to the plan and that operation of annexation of Ukraine is on its way. The world leaders are standing with Ukraine, and I think we should listen to Boris Johnson, who started speaking Ukrainian, which is very impressive. And I want to say that Ukrainians were very impressed, and thank you very much for this.
Звертаюся до українців у Великобританії та тих, хто зараз в Україні та сусідніх країнах. I cannot even imagine what you're living through right now, or the outrage and heartbreak you must feel as everything you know and love is so inexplicably and brutally shattered. What's happening in your homeland is an abomination. And like people across the UK, I am heartsick at the destruction and loss of life. On Wednesday, MPs in our House of Commons stood to applaud the Ukrainian ambassador and to demonstrate that the whole of the UK stands squarely with the people of Ukraine and your awe-inspiring struggle against this aggression. Together with Ukraine's many friends, we're doing everything we can to support you and to impose a mountain of pressure on Vladimir Putin. We're working with more than 25 allies and partners from as far away as Australia to support those engaged in the battle, not only to protect their homes, but freedom and democracy itself. With the US and the European Union, we've brought in the biggest package of global sanctions ever imposed on Russia, and we will go further unless and until this aggression stops. The world is turning its back on Putin and his regime. Global corporations are severing ties with Russia, participation in sporting events is being cancelled, and nation after nation is taking a stand. The vice is tightening its grip, and it will continue to tighten. To those Ukrainians here in the UK who I know are desperately worried about family and friends, I can tell you we're doing everything we can to help those fleeing the conflict. If you're a Ukrainian in the UK, we've made it easier for you to bring over family members through the Ukrainian Family Scheme. On Tuesday, I announced there will be a new humanitarian sponsorship route. And we're matching the donations you make through the Disasters Emergency Committee Ukraine Appeal, starting with £20 million, alongside the hundreds of millions we're providing in humanitarian aid. Putin has made a grave miscalculation. The free world is united in its resolve to stand up to his barbarism. And the fortitude and defiance of the Ukrainian people in the face of this unjust and unwarranted aggression is moving hearts around the world. I've spoken almost every day to President Volodymyr Zelensky, and I marvel at his bravery, his calm, his sense of purpose, just as I marvel at the heroism and resolve of the Ukrainian people. And I know that however long it takes, however arduous, Putin must fail. Our thoughts and our sympathies are with the whole of Ukraine in its battle for freedom. Slava Ukraini.
That was Boris Johnson. Thank you very much. And I know humanitarian aid to Ukraine is massive. Still, some people asking us what they can bring, what they can contribute, and what people in Ukraine really need right now. From what was sent to us from Ukraine, and excuse my translation if it's not translated very well. However, what people need is thermal underwear, optics, binoculars, bulletproof vests and helmets, walkie-talkies, horns for machine guns, tactical glasses, night vision devices. From everyday use, they need care mats, sleeping bags, men's shoes, military style, or trekking high, warm, black or green shoes, knee pads, mittens, military boots, briefs, socks, shaving machines. From the food, cereals, canned food, tea, coffee, dry soups, and any long-lasting food. Also, from the things that they may use there will be packing material for food, packing materials for meals, lunch boxes, soup glasses, plastic boxes. I know that many places didn't take clothes for some time because they thought that clothes may not be necessary. However, I think as of today, they also start taking some clothes, especially children's clothes, because women and children are now in Poland and they have a very small luggages as they were not allowed to take practically anything. So that will be the help. If you can spare something, that would be really, really appreciated. And thank you very much. There are many talks about how to join the Foreign Legion in Ukraine for those who would like to go and fight for Ukraine. And Ukrainian embassy around the world can provide you with this information. Vladimir Putin have become a victim of his own propaganda. The propaganda in Moscow for many years was that Ukrainians will meet Russian soldiers with the open arms. And he has been talking about Ukrainians as somebody who is not happy to live in Ukraine. However, Ukrainian people proved that the claims are false. They love their country. They're ready to protect their country. And Russian soldiers who are coming to the places and invading places every day find the resistance of people overwhelming. People are trying to stop them everywhere they go. And the town of Kherson didn't stop demonstrations now against the invasion. Let's have a look at those brave people.
Нахуй домой!
Людей море. Это Херсон, площадь Свободы. Люди скандируют «фашисты».
Фашисты! 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 Фашисты!
Они фашисты.
Фашисты! 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 Русский корабль! Иди нахуй!
Куда еще надоело? Куда они мне надоели, правда?
А я тут лодку рву. Площадь Свободы полностью заполнена людьми. Полностью заполнена людьми. И с той стороны Ушакова, и с этой стороны Ушакова.
люди скандируют «Украина», «фашисты», «Русский корабль, иди нахуй». Херсон вышел весь. И это при том, что нету транспорта, люди шли пешком. Когда я шел, по всем улицам шли люди, и было все больше и больше к центру города. А вон и фашисты.
That was Kherson, the Freedom Square of Kherson. Despite the fact that there is no public transport, people were coming into the square from all over the city. The city right now is in Russian control. However, people are telling Russian soldiers to go home, that Kherson is a Ukraine territory and that they should go. They showing with all their might that Russian soldiers are not welcome in Ukraine. And Putin is not a freedom person who is freeing them from something. He is the invader, he is a brutal invader, and he needs to be stopped. We commend the brave people of Kherson and brave people of Ukraine for their incredible resistance. And we are hoping that this war will be over very soon. People who are now writing in Russian, they just saying that thank you very much, and we support the Ukrainian people in their massive effort against Russian aggression. Ukrainian cities have to be evacuated, and we know that there are massive difficulty to get out of the town that is under attack. We know that there is a confusion within Russian population because they are started being prosecuted if they are saying no war slogan. Russians now experiencing the same pressure that people had in 1937 when Stalin have been creating gulag structure and putting political prisoners to work for the country for free, enslaving them in their effort to create a big communist state. Right now, Russians are afraid. From one side, they are under massive economic sanctions. The shops are simply stop working, like, for example, IKEA, creating massive queues and people trying to grab whatever they can before they will stop having access to electronics or, in fact, any other Western goods. At the same time, many people believe that this is actually good because they want to bring back Soviet Union. And Soviet Union, for them, is something that was bringing them so-called stability and a good atmosphere. Let's see how they will get on, because at the moment, there is no indication that Russia will end up well after this war. There is a growing concern about China, whether China will attack Russia as soon as China will see that Russia is getting weaker. If this war will weaken Europe, will weaken Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, would China make the first move? Would other countries around Russia start claiming their territories? Russia have occupied enough of the territories that doesn't belong to her, as Russia's imperial politics of taking as much land as they can. Would people of those territories start fighting back? This is what we don't know at the moment, but the talks already started. And we can hope that those movements within Russia, within Belarus, within other countries will start growing bigger and bigger, and maybe the Putin's regime is going to be brought down by people, which is a long time overdue. However, right now, the situation is difficult, but we don't see that massive protest in Moscow or in Belarus. Tomorrow, there may be more protests, because tomorrow is the day of protests against war. We will see protests in London, protests hopefully in Russia and Belarus, and everywhere in the world where people do support Ukraine. The growing concern about the nuclear weapons and also nuclear power station was expressed by Ministry of Defense, Alexei Reznikov. Sorry, my pronunciation is Reznikov. Yes, Alexei Reznikov. And maybe let's listen to what he said about the Energodar power station.
Today, I appeal to the international community. First of all, I would like to thank our partners for their support. The whole of Europe understands that they are sending aid to Ukraine because hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians today, at the cost of their lives, the lives of their relatives, and even children, are deterring the aggressor from invading other countries. At the same time, NATO allies refuses to close the sky over the Ukraine. The arguments about murders, targeted bombing, and rocket attacks on residential buildings, hospitals, maternity hospitals, and kindergartens, and the destruction of one of the European nations are not sufficient in 21st century in Europe. Fine. Then all of those who are now blocking the closure of the sky over Ukraine should recall April 1986, the Saturday night, April 26. Do you recall? That was the night when the disaster happened. The disaster that is considered to be the most massive in the history of the nuclear energy, both in terms of the number of people killed and affected by its consequences, and in terms of economic damage. The radioactive cloud from the Chernobyl accident passed over the European part of the existing USSR, the largest part of Europe, and the eastern part of USA. Today we are talking about Zaporizhzhia NPP, the largest one in Europe. The consequences of the Chernobyl accident with only one power unit was and were catastrophic for the world. And now imagine what will happen if another Russian missile hits the Zaporizhzhia NPP, which has 6 power units. Currently, the site of Zaporizhzhia NPP as well as the Chernobyl NPP are under the control of Russian armed forces. Targeting Energodar with its Zaporizhzhia NPP wasn't an accident. These are purposeful actions. Russia has committed an act of nuclear terrorism. We were miraculously lucky as the fire was liquidated, but tomorrow may not be so lucky. If the Zaporizhzhia NPP explosion occurs, the consequences will be devastating, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole world, as a nuclear disaster of this scale will surpass all previous accidents at nuclear power plants, including Chernobyl and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. So now there is a question. Is the world ready for a catastrophic 6 times as massive as Chernobyl? Are all those who hesitate now whether is it necessary to close the sky over Ukraine ready to sacrifice the lives and health not only of Ukrainians but also of their children? This is not about a war somewhere far away in Ukraine. It's about your safety and about the nuclear danger to the whole world. So consider the situation. Ask yourself a question. Are you ready to just hope that the rocket will not hit the nuclear power plants, as they do not accidentally hit, to homes and kindergartens? Preventive sanctions were not imposed. Everyone is now watching from a distance the consequences of this hesitation on TV. You cannot observe a nuclear catastrophe from afar. It's not going to work out the way. Your arguments that the current refusal to implement A2AD is related to the fact that NATO is trying to avoid the nuclear war is not convincing, since Russia has already started it. Historical lessons are served and they must be taken into account. Listen to your people. Yesterday, Reuters Ipsos poll made it clear that the outrage over Russia's invasion of Ukraine is growing. About 74% of Americans, including the vast majority of Republicans and Democrats, say the United States and its North Atlantic Treaty Organization's allies should introduce a no-fly zone in Ukraine. The poll said, if Eisenhower had supported Europe before the World War II, the United States would have never had Pearl Harbor. If the countries of the world imposes the same sanctions against Russia as today, a full-scale war will not have begun. Say the least of it, the only way of all of us to survive, and I mean the whole world, is the A2AD zone.
Thank you very much, Alexei Reznikov, and we commend your bravery. And right now, Ukraine shows not only bravery to stand up to Russian invaders, but bravery to stand up to the whole world and bring up the values that we are abide by, but by we are ruled, our values of our pure existence, of our core, the values of freedom, of normal life, of food, of existence. And right now, Vladimir Zelensky has to remind us about those values that we practically forgot. We didn't understand them anymore because we were taking them for granted so much and for so many years. And right now, all those values, all those principles are about to be broken by Russian troops who may reproduce a nuclear disaster in order to put some more pressure on us, some more threat on us. And by the fact how Russians are treating their own soldiers, we can say that Vladimir Putin doesn't really worry about his own people. Why would he worry about people of Europe or Ukraine? No, he would not. Some people question sanity of Vladimir Putin, if he's actually sane. And there are questions there. We cannot give definite answer. However, acts of Vladimir Putin are horrifying. Russian soldiers are carrying crematorium machine, portable crematoriums into Ukraine, knowing that that's them who will be burned in those crematoriums. This is scary because half of the soldiers who are taken as a prisoners of war, giving horrible stories about being on the exercises in Belarus and then being told that they're going home. Instead of going home, they are appearing in Ukraine. We can say that some of them are lying. We can say that some of them are telling it because they want to save their lives. However, number of those people, when they call home to their moms, we understand they're probably telling the truth because none of their mothers or relatives knew what was happening. And they also didn't know what was happening. There's a growing awareness now in Russia that people are simply dying in Ukraine. Wounded are not taken from the battlefields. And we've got horrible stories about officers killing the wounded soldiers so they can put them into portable crematoriums and cover their deeds and cover their crimes. And this is how Vladimir Putin was working for 20 years of his power, covering his crimes and crimes of his people who surrounded him. And right now, all those crimes probably may surface. So get ready for more horrible stories in the future. To end our little reportage tonight, I would like to urge you to come to the demonstrations, to the protests around England tomorrow, and support Ukrainian people in their effort to bring normality back to their homes. They are protecting now our freedom. They are protecting their freedom. Let's support them in every way we can. Thank you very much. And let's watch a little gathering of people who are saying that Vladimir Zelensky is really great and call Vladimir Putin really bad names in Ukrainian.
Yes,